Toby, it's a tough period for regions in and out of action. How have you dealt with the inaction over the past few weeks?
Yeah, as you say, at the end of the first block, after the 13 weeks, we couldn't wait for the break, and now, obviously, after being in the intermittent stuff, it becomes a little more disjointed. I think the positives are it's allowed us to get more people healthy and not put so much of a stress on us, even though it's an international window. I know we haven't contributed as much as we normally do due to injury, but that's allowed us to get people back and get people up to speed, which has been good. But you don't have that continuity of learning week on week and improving. I think that's particularly difficult for younger players. You almost have to play your way in a little bit. So there was certain bits, for example, in the Edinburgh game, which were a little bit disjointed from where we were previously. So, yeah, there's pros and cons to it. As you know, we try and be as innovative and collaborative as we can around getting ourselves ready. So we had a training session, for example, at Bristol last week, which was beneficial for both parties, trying stuff against different people. And, you've got to try and make yourself as ready as you can be. So, yeah, we're hopeful that we've done that, but until we kick off on Friday, we won't know.
Just looking back to that Edinburgh game, I know you spoke post-match. One that got away?
Yeah, I think so. I think the nature, it wasn't just everyone focuses on the last play of the game, right? Where you get an opportunity to win it. But, the penalty count was high compared to what we'd usually have. We knew we'd be very, very good discipline-wise, single figures and whatever. And we gave away 8 penalties, I think, in the first half. So from that point of view, we probably didn't, at which they converted 3 of them through stuff that was in our control. So, yeah, that's what I mean about just being a little bit off in some of the stuff. We got better. We almost had to play our way in. So I think that if you look at what they actually created, we defended, brilliantly and were tough away from home. But really, our thoughts are we gifted it too much too easily for them, to be fair. So when you say a one that got away, yeah, the last play we'll focus on, but there were plenty of opportunities for us to negate even being in that position.
2 huge games now, it goes without saying, Munster and the Lions, yeah. And not sort of forgetting South Africa, but we know how tough going out there is.
We've won there now, though.
Probably need to.
We've won there now. So.
You have, but 2 wins would put you in good stead for the top 8.
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously everyone looks at our home form's been good, right? So from that point of view, continuing that is important for us to establish yourself as a competitor for sure. So there's some big picture stuff here. And also we've talked a bit as a group around creating an opportunity and crafting an opportunity. We've created an opportunity to get ourselves into the final shake-up. And home games are obviously probably the primary things that allows us to do that. So this game and the next game, as you say, are very important for us from a momentum and to stay within that top 8 realm which we all want to be in.
Warren Gatland spoke about a light at the end of the tunnel after the game against Italy, and it's probably difficult for the nation to see that at present in terms of the national team, given the first whitewash for 21 years. But in terms of yourself, you're seeing those green shoots, and they're more visible this year than ever, given wins that you've picked up, notably the one recently against Ulster.
Yeah, I think that we started this a few years ago, and I did a couple of pieces for Rugby Pass and an internal piece around how we've got to this position. And our program is good, but we've made a focus, and one of my focus points about coming into the Ospreys was about developing our own players and trying to not stockpile mediocrity in the middle of your squad, really. So you want enough ambition at the top and international players at the top, and you want to grow the bottom into the middle, and hopefully they go all the way through to the top. So, from that pyramid, if you like, it's important to get the right people in. But we started this journey a few years ago, and I think we're seeing the benefits from it. If you look at the start, there were people like Morgan Morris, Ruben, Jack Morgan, Dowie Lake, there's a Reece Davis. There's even Gareth Thomas, who is the starting loose head for Wales now, was third choice when I got here. So, it's not just about the young; it's also about the opportunity and seeing what you want. So, I think that we were probably ahead of the curve in that respect, and now we're focusing on the Dan Edwards and the Morgan Morses and the people in the next lot. So, it's always going to be a conveyor belt thing, but you've got to put deliberate attention on it. So. We also understand that young players are fraught with a little bit of inconsistency. That's why they're young, and that's part of it. So, look, the one thing I would say around that is a deliberate plan. Secondly, is there's definitely an effort and intent competitiveness within the Ospreys, and I think you've seen that in Wales as well. In relation to, but that young players need a lot of guidance. They need a lot of support. They need a lot of good coaching. They need a lot of clarity, because they don't know what they don't know. So I think, even though if you can't see what that is, as long as those things are being adhered to, and they will progress into better performances, more competitive performances, and hopefully wins. But when you're as an international coach, you're in a position where results are obviously very, very important, and very, very visible. So it's a difficult place to be in, but young players require a certain amount of different attention and different needs. So if you're going to grow your own, it's definitely a long-term process for sure.
Those players you've spoken about, do they feel aggrieved? Some people I've spoken to are perplexed that they weren't in the national squad. They're form players. You're the highest placed region. I know you've got a wry smile, but it is a talking point given where we're at, and the starting front row on the bench on the Saturday had 2 caps between them.
Yeah, again, look, I understand why you asked the question. I smile because I was probably expecting the question, to be fair. You did hide it well, though, to be fair. The situations around, it's about balance, isn't it? So a balance about where you're trying to get to and how quickly you can get there. So I think that, firstly, Wales know what they want to be and what they require and what's important to them. So they will select on those attributes for sure. So, that's not a question for us, really. That's a question for them. So when I talked about clarity, that's what I mean. I said, and this is my opinion. And I'm sure that feedback, is 2 ways to those players that you mentioned. So that's the first bit. And then losing so many senior players in one go is never easy. We've come from a lot of those in our own region, but because of what we've done previously, they're then in a position to probably grab the mantle, and the time is right for them. Dowie Lake's a person that I often bring out in this, because he's been ready to lead since he was 18, if you listen to him. But actually, his credibility in the group and bits of it. But you can go too far and go too young. You need a few old heads, few of experience, but also a lot of support. And that support can be on the pitch or around them, and understand that, that, as I said earlier, that you create an environment where they can thrive without the pressure. And that's very, very difficult, or virtually impossible to do in an international sense, for sure.
Just finally, before the other guys come in, I know this is difficult injury-wise because you haven't played for a while, but can you give us a sense of where you are in terms of your personnel that are involved, or sure, even some coming back? Yeah,
so we've looked at, obviously, the international programme about who played, and obviously the 3 boys. I mean, obviously George went off injured. Gareth and Beardy have played a hell of a lot of minutes, so they won't be involved. We don't know, but Owen Watkin is keen to play. He's made that clear. We obviously need to make sure we get a balance there, because he's still been in the training programme. Who else has come back? So Max Nagy's come back. Hugh Sutton's come back. There's one more, I think it was. Garen Phillips has come back for us. So yeah, we're getting some bodies off the physio bench onto the pitch, which is good.
Bro, thank you. I'll leave the others to come in. Thanks, Toby.
Cheers, thank you.
Hi Toby, how are you?
Good, thanks, Steph. How are you, mate?
Yeah, good, thanks. On Max Nagy, you probably haven't been asked this for a few months. is there any clarification yet on whether he's Welsh qualified? Because I know you were sort of looking into it.
Yeah, I think the simple answer is check's still in the post. I've not heard anything for the last one, and obviously now he's come back to fitness. I'm sure it's a question that will be, as you just so rightly said, come back to, the front of the queue. So no, we've not had any confirmation as of yet, and I actually will make sure you're the first to know, as you've asked me.
Oh, thanks. Thanks, appreciate that. Some good news announced last week. Will Greatbank's been signed.
Yep.
Only 21, Welsh qualified. What's he going to bring, and how high is his ceiling? Because he's still very young, isn't he?
Yeah, not a lot of people saw that. I mean, I think, it's part of the bigger picture. We have to be resourceful. I think that, everyone's talking about the 25 cap rule and getting people. We've got to get more people into the bottom of the pyramid, and wherever we get that, our talent pathways, our academy systems, we've got to get off our arses and get going and go and scour wherever we can to get high potential, get them in good programs and get them through. So look, Will was a person that's identified, and we looked at his stuff. He's obviously a big lad, got physical prowess, which is good, and he's young, and the fact that he wants to come back to Wales and play for Wales is a good thing. So yeah, we're excited to have him, and a few of those boys certainly takes grows your strength in depth over time, but it's also the time that it requires. So he's been in obviously in France a lot of his life. We don't know what sort of coaching he's had. We can see raw potential. It'll be exciting to get our hands on him, get him up and running, and see where we can get him.
Yeah, this next question is probably one you were expecting as well. It was reported on the weekend that Nicky Smith has signed for Leicester. True or false?
I can't answer that question I can answer it, but I'm not going to. So I think there'll be something coming around the corner around that, and to be mindful of the contractual situations of everyone involved. And if that does come to fruition, then you'll find about it through the appropriate channels. But from our point of view, going back to the first point, is you've got to have enough strength in depth, enough recruitment to make sure if you do lose significant people, that you've got people to fill in for them.
Yeah, in terms of recruitment, I appreciate you can't name names, but are there more in the pipeline, more new signings in the pipeline for your supporters to get excited about?
I hope so. Yeah, I think so. I think it's an interesting one because obviously we've got the guardrails in place in relation to make sure we do protect our Welsh contingent. I think that we will always endeavour to do that, which is really, really important for us and obviously the country. And also you want a spattering of good quality non-qualified players to make yourself competitive. So I think there's always been a balancing act. That's not a new thing. But wherever possible, we'd like to keep everybody Welsh. So from that point of view, yeah, we've got some things in the pipeline, and I think we're pretty far down the line with some of that. So hopefully you can get some more exciting news soon.
So, and just the last question. Obviously, you've got two big league games coming up, and obviously you've got the Sale knockout game in the Challenge Cup. How tough will that be? Balancing the squad because. You want to win every game, but it's obviously hard, isn't it, when your squad's not as deep as maybe other clubs with more money?
Yeah, for sure. And when it comes, the seasons are roughly split into three places, right? So it's obviously the momentum from pre-season excitement, get going, and then you have to go through the slog of winter, really, and we're just sort of coming out the end of that, and the Six Nations, which is a slog. And then if you're in the position where, you can then kick on and go for something, then, you get to the exciting part. But you have to do parts 1 and 2 before you get to 3. So, we've got to that third part. And the irony is that we've probably done parts 1 and 2 with probably half a squad of the ones that we've actually got. So, we're hopeful to get, even more people back, Dowie Lake, Jack Morgan being probably the next two, which is a bit exciting for everybody, So to get some real quality back when it really matters, it'll be great. So, but as you say, the next 3 weeks are really critical around that. So we need to just focus and control the controllables and get on with what we can.
Brilliant. Thanks, Toby, and good luck for the weekend.
Thanks, Steph. Thanks a lot.
Yes.
Toby, when will you get Jack and Dowie back, do you think?
The short answer is I don't know. I don't think it will be for the next two. We're hoping potentially for the European games.
Right.
Certainly one of them. But we will see. They've not resumed to training yet, and so that's normally at least a 2-week window from that point of view. We like long-term injuries. You want at least, a couple of weeks, out in the middle,
And are you writing off George for the rest of the season?
Not had that feedback yet. So from that point of view, the first thing is let's make sure that he's okay, and a person that's contributed so much, for Welsh rugby needs to be, respectfully treated, and it's best to make sure that he's in, as healthy as he could be and what state of mind he's in, and then we'll establish what injury we've got and where we go from there. So I'm just disappointed for him that it finished in the way that he did, but let's not focus on the very last bit. Let's focus on the 120 plus claps that what he's really done, and that's the stuff we want to remember George for.
Yeah. Now, Munster is a scary word in rugby terms, but I'm going to mention two words that are even more scary, which is Graham Rowntree.
Yeah. So yeah.
How far back do you go?
When I started, he was still playing. So that probably shows my age as much as his. But no, Wig's a good rugby man, comes from a brilliant rugby pedigree, and he's a typical English forward, opinionated and strong, and his team and bloody minded, and his team resemble that, which is the best compliment you can give them. And if you look how they won last year, it was around those sort of attributes that got them over the line. So yeah, a very tough proposition for sure.
He certainly took on a tough task in Munster, and he delivered some silverware. I mean, that's amazing.
Yeah, no, unbelievably so. And obviously, I came into Quins after he was there, and he was spoken of very highly there and bits and pieces. So yeah, he's done a really, really good job there. They've kicked on, and they're like all the Irish provinces are very, very competitive and tough. But we need to make sure that, as we know, we're going to meet those sort of attributes, with the way that we have to, and work around it. So a tough challenge, but an exciting one.
They've played a couple of friendly fixtures in the interim to try to keep everyone up playing. Was that something you considered, or is it just not something you were able to do?
Well, again, the next best is the live training sessions, right? So we did Cardiff, and we did Bristol, where you can just limit the contact area exposure, because that's where they come from, and we just can't afford to get too much collateral damage, unfortunately. So we go for the next best thing.
Yeah, coming back to your new recruit for next season, how did that come about? And in terms of recruitment across all four regions and Wales in particular, are we really doing enough to see if there's someone who's Welsh qualified and bringing them in? I mean, it's great to see you go to the French second division. It's a bit of a punt maybe on potential and what he can deliver. But it just seems Faye Boso's the classic case in point here. We've missed a potential diamond there. And is it just the number of people, or is it an attitude? I don't know.
Well, firstly on Will, he's been in France a long time, right? So you can't do things that you don't know about. So I think that you need to be, your relationships with various agencies and talent scouts and bits and pieces. So, it's not just about the identification of players, it's the background, for example. I mean, there's a couple of Welsh coaches in France that I've spoken to who help you out with certain references. And it's all very well identified. They've still got to be the right player and the right player for you. But ultimately, there are people want to play the best rugby they can. They want to be in the best programs you can. But it's very, very difficult when you only follow the same traditional routes of recruitment, right? So you need to try and do things differently. Now, we are privileged in the fact that our owners, Y11, are very progressive around that. So the Cheetahs relationship, for example, buys us some freedom. But that's not going to help the Welsh side of things. But what it means is we've got a degree of certainty there, which means we can focus probably more on young Welsh talent, for example. And it also suits our sort of intent and also our strategy of growing our own. So, all these things are joined up, right? So But you can't recruit what's not there. You want to make sure that your pathway is as strong as it can be around identification, recruitment, and getting people in. But also, you've got to think outside the box, because there are people out there. You've got to make sure you do the work and do whatever you can in the time and resources that you have to try and pick up one or two, because it only takes one or two.
Is this one of the weaknesses potentially of the regional system, in that you all work in a silo and damn the other three? Should there not be a national database maybe? Should there not be, a couple of people working at the union that says, look, here's someone or there's someone, and maybe that terrible thought getting into the Irish system where you've got someone at the top sitting above everyone and maybe filtering things down for the benefit of everyone?
I think, it's an interesting conversation, obviously probably something that I've not really put that much thought into, because I think when you're at the coalface, you're naturally going to be dealing what you have to deal with. Your job is still your job. 80% of your job is still the main thing being the main thing. So then it comes down to, time allocated, reward, all those sort of things. And when people talk about resources, often people go straight away to players and money. It's not necessarily just about that. It's about having the right infrastructure, having the right opportunity to support whatever. But also, you do want a little bit of separation, because it becomes a silo within a silo if you're not careful. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So from that point of view, you've got to have enough diversity. That was the word I was looking for. Enough diversity, but also you can only make people aware. So look, I think the more joined up that side of things is certainly going to be beneficial. But you can't wish. I mean, everyone loves the Waterboy, right? The film The Waterboy, because it's the unusual becoming the champ. So those stories are very rare, and you might get one or two. But we've got to keep looking at every avenue and turning over every stone we can to get as many good players playing that are Welsh qualified, playing in Wales or associated to a Welsh region, because that's the only way we're going to grow the talent pool.
Yeah. Finally then, do you expect all the Munster Irishmen to be back or still on the Guinness this week, or where do their main threats come from? What are you looking at?
Well, when you've got a squad of 60, you haven't got to rely too much on that. So, I think that they'll probably take a very pragmatic approach like they always do. It's all joined up, and some will be in, some will be out. The good thing about the Irish thing is normally it's very transparent, and they tell you in the press anyway what's going. They're not worried about it, and I'm not worried about it. Hence the reason I've told you. I think the small-mindedness about that sort of stuff, I think we just got to get on with it. So I think that they'll take the same approach. The people that have been on the fringes, they'll play, and the people that have played a lot probably won't.
Yeah, great. Be a big win.
Yeah, it would be. So fingers crossed we can get our performance right and see where it takes us.
Do you relish the underdog tag? You talk about the Waterboy there, but it's do you team and the players themselves, and do you relish that tag?
What do you think?
From the performances this season, yes.
So the underdog thing is, I sounded Irish then, is an interesting one, because it suggests low expectation, right? So it's easier to fly under the radar. Whereas our expectations within our group are strong and probably not underdog or favourite. It's just about being the best we can be. Best versions of ourselves, prepare well, all that sort of thing. So I do think being an underdog has its favours in relation to expectation. So potential reduced pressure with a young team and young squad. I think sometimes there's a bit of benefit in that. But ultimately we're trying to become the favourite at some point. So yeah, I don't really have a preference, but I understand the question, and also I think there's pluses and minuses in both ways, because once you become the favourite, the expectation becomes greater, and you need a greater level of performance and consistency as well as results. So it's a difficult one.
Is there certain players that you have in the camp that sort of respond to that kind of mentality, though?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's less about favourite and underdog. It's more about respect and lack of respect, So I think that we've talked a lot about earning respect as a group, and if we can keep putting in performances, effort-based performances and tough performances, you gain respect, and that's the first part of climbing the ladder.
So you come against Munster this weekend, who have scored quite a lot of points, 40 odd points in the last few games. Haven't really started great in the last few games. The key point this weekend is perhaps starting strongly, really trying to get into the game early.
You always want to start games well, especially at home. Despite the score, but we started well in Edinburgh as well, which is good. And the start is always, sets the tone, as it were. But we're also happy to come from behind, as you've seen. So it depends on where you gauge the start, whether it's just on the scoreboard or just level of performance and territory and bits and pieces. So look, you always look to start the game well, especially at home, and as they will be doing the same. We will, we're at home and we want to impose ourselves as soon as we can.
And maybe a bit of a selection dilemma this week at 8. We've got Morgan Morris fit now, and Morgan Morse starring for the under-20s this week as well. Is that a bit of a headache, or is it a nice problem to have?
Competition for places is great to have. It does require more management and respectful, clarity in comms, for sure. And also depends on, how much people have played, what people come back on, condition people come back on. Amount of preparation time you've had versus, so for example, Friday game gives you less preparation time. So, from that point of view, it's all things you throw into the mix for sure. But yeah, we certainly welcome more competition for places for sure.
And I guess having 3 games in 3 weeks really does help in that factor too.
Yeah, we'll keep people fresh, keep people excited. Yeah, so if it's not this week, you can just have to be ready for the next one.
Do you think in the longer term that one of the players might have to change the position, possibly?
No, not really. I think people are obsessive by shirt numbers. I think it's around, and I understand why, it's just the norm. I think it's actually about characteristics within the play. You look at, Ben Earl, for example, for England, he's not a traditional number 8 in relation to the size, makeup or whatever. But he's probably one of the form players of the tournament. It's about having the attributes he possesses. You're going to speak to James Ratty in a minute. He's played second row, back row. He's played 8. He's played 6. But what we really want from Ratty is, the attributes he brings to the game. The competitiveness, the attitude, the collision, because. Those are the things you want. The fact he's a line-out forward means he can play in different positions. So it's the attributes that you're interested in, not the shirt numbers. And, the 2 8s that you talk about, have different skill sets for sure. And one's more attacking based than defensively based. It depends on, the type of game you can play and also the balance. The two greatest challenges in from a selection point of view on balance are getting the balance of your back row right and then getting the balance of your midfield right. So because it all depends on what you're trying to do and how you're trying to play.
With George North out now, probably for quite a bit of time, have you got in mind really a selection for centre for this weekend?
Yeah, I've got an idea about it. I'm probably not going to share it right now, but we haven't got too much to choose from, but and we've also got, we've got some people, as you said, the way of getting around less squad size numbers is to have flexibility in positions, so we've got a lot of people that can play in 2 or 3 positions, and you just want to get your best players on the pitch.
Have you still got all the cheaters available too?
Yep, they're all available this week.
And finally, really, a night game, really, it always brings a bit of a different atmosphere against big game as well against Munster. And how big will the supporters be this weekend if you can get them out? Yeah,
no, obviously, I think that they make a massive difference. I think the last game at home was a great example of that against Ulster. I think that they massively played a part, and people like playing in front of their home fans and supporters. And so the more we have, the better the atmosphere, the more connectivity to everyone on the pitch.